She was just a little girl, shivering on a street corner, clutching two babies in a threadbare blanket. No one stopped. No one looked twice. Until one man cold, powerful, and impossibly rich paused just long enough to see something he didn't expect. Why was this child caring for newborn twins? Who were they, and what did this billionaire recognize in her face that left him speechless? What began as a moment of pity soon spiraled into a battle of power, blood, and belonging. Behind courtroom walls and clinical labs, secrets were unearthed secrets that exposed not only the legacy of a broken genius, but the humanity of a woman who was never supposed to matter. This is not just a story about poverty and privilege. It's a story about who we choose to protect and who we choose to discard. So before we dive in, ask yourself, what would you do if the system told you the children you love aren't yours to keep? If this story touches you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that speak truth to power. Now, let's begin. The wind clawed through Briar Glen like it was angry at something no one could name. Downtown was nearly deserted, just a few snow-covered cars parked under flickering lamplights and the rhythmic hum of an old vending machine at the corner bus terminal. It was the kind of cold that felt personal, that slipped into your bones and whispered that no one was coming. And yet, someone had come. A girl no older than 9 sat huddled on the cracked wooden bench beneath the shelter's broken roof. She held her coat open like wings, wrapped tightly around 2 crying babies' twins, no more than a few weeks old. Their cries were hoarse now, fading from hunger and cold. The girl looked around, trembling. Her cheeks were blotched pink from windburn. Her boots didn't match. One was duct-taped near the toe. She didn't cry. Instead, she sang, quietly, off-key. But it was the kind of song that made you pause if you heard it a lullaby. Maybe something her mother used to hum, except her mother wasn't here. She wasn't coming back. From the back lot, headlights pierced the mist like the eyes of some great animal. A sleek black car too polished, too powerful for a place like this rolled to a slow stop just past the no parking sign. The driver got out, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored wool coat and leather gloves. Evelyn Monroe didn't usually stop. Not at bus terminals. Not on Friday nights. Not with a board meeting in 12 hours. But tonight, something tugged at her. She wasn't a woman prone to whims. You didn't become one of the country's most powerful tech CEOs by following instincts over logic. And yet, she stepped closer. The snow crunched under her heels. Then she heard it, the singing, and the sobbing beneath it. She saw the shape of a girl small, shaking, lips pressed white with effort, rocking slightly, as if trying to keep the babies from waking fully. Evelyn's breath caught. She knew that look. She had worn it once, long ago. "Sweetheart," she said gently, crouching down, her voice softer than her appearance suggested. "What are you doing out here?" The girl's eyes shot open, hazel, wide, and filled with something no child should know: suspicion. "Not supposed to talk to strangers," the girl whispered. Evelyn smiled, not rising. "That's smart. Your mom teach you that." The girl didn't answer. Her chin quivered. She looked down at the babies, at their matching pink faces, stiff with cold. Then back up. She's gone." Evelyn didn't ask where. She knew what gone could mean. "Okay," Evelyn said, keeping her voice low, her breath making small clouds in the air. "Then you're the grown-up now. Is that right?" The girl nodded. Slowly. "Then I'll talk to you like one." Evelyn reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a pair of wool mittens. "Take these, and we've got a heater in the car. I won't drive off. I'll just open the door. For the babies. They need warmth, and you're doing your best. But no one can do this alone." The girl hesitated. Then, with trembling arms, she stood. Not for herself. For them. That was what hit Evelyn hardest. This little girl, barely taller than her shoulders, stood up, not because she trusted, not because she believed, but because she had no other choice. Evelyn opened the car door. Inside, the twins whimpered as heat spilled from the leather seats. Evelyn unzipped her coat and laid it over the car's warm back seat. The girl settled in after placing the babies down, carefully tucking them with surprising tenderness. She climbed in last. Still watching Evelyn like a cornered animal, the driver, Royce Henderson, glanced back through the mirror, brows raised. But he said nothing. They'd worked together too long. Evelyn got in slowly, sitting beside the girl. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The girl hesitated. "Talia. Talia, Grace. And the babies." She turned to look at them, her face softening. "That's Micah," she whispered, pointing to the boy. "And Mira." Evelyn nodded. Then silence filled the space, except for the hum of the engine and the shallow breathing of the babies. Evelyn didn't ask where they were going. She didn't ask what happened. Not yet. There was a time for questions. For now, she just reached forward and turned up the heat. Talia watched her, eyes still sharp but less wary now. "You're not going to call the cops." Evelyn paused, thought, then said, "Do you want me to?" Talia shook her head. "Then no." Evelyn said, "I'm going to take you somewhere warm. We'll get food and diapers. Then we'll talk. If that's okay." Talia blinked. Her chin wobbled. She looked like she wanted to speak. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." Evelyn didn't respond right away. She simply placed a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. And in that moment, under the snow-covered sky and the flickering lights of the terminal, something shifted, not just for Talia, but for Evelyn too. Because the truth was, she hadn't stopped out of instinct. She had stopped because something in her recognized the girl. A shadow, a voice, a resemblance. But that was impossible. Wasn't it? She stared at the twins again, at their little cheeks, round and soft, and her heart pulled tighter than it had in years. The hotel lobby glowed with soft amber light and smelled faintly of cinnamon and lemon wood polish. Evelyn guided Talia carefully across the marble floor. The twins bundled in her arms with the hotel blanket she'd borrowed from the car trunk. Royce had parked discreetly in the underground lot, and no one had asked questions, because no one ever questioned Evelyn Monroe when she moved with purpose. But even in a 5-star hotel, Talia looked like she didn't belong. She walked close to Evelyn, eyes darting like a stray cat, unsure if the safety was real or just a trap. She didn't let go of Mira for a second. Micah slept against Evelyn's shoulder, his small breaths a rhythmic puff of warmth against her neck. Evelyn had called ahead for a sweet one with a small kitchenette and a washer-dryer combo. She'd never used that part of the room before. Tonight, it mattered. "Here we are," Evelyn said softly as the door clicked open. "It's warm. There's food in the fridge, and the beds are clean." Talia nodded, but didn't move past the threshold. Her shoes left wet outlines on the tile. Evelyn placed Micah gently on the sofa, then turned to the girl. "You okay?" Talia looked down, like she was ashamed. "I'm not dirty. I didn't say you were." The girl's fists clenched. "You're going to call someone." "I know it." Evelyn crouched. "I'm going to call a pediatrician to come check the twins. That's it. No cops, no social workers, just someone to make sure they're okay. You've done something incredibly brave, Talia, but brave girls still need help. Talia's lips trembled. Her body stayed tense, but she stepped inside, slowly. Evelyn moved with care. She didn't bombard her with questions, even though 100 were circling in her head. Where's your mother? Why were you at that station? How long have you been alone? But she knew better. You don't get answers with pressure. You get them with trust. By the time the pediatrician, a private on-call doctor Evelyn had used once for a late-night fever during a partner meeting, arrived, the twins were already swaddled in warm towels. Mira had stopped crying. Micah had begun to root instinctively toward Talia's arm. They're a bit underweight, Dr. Kwan said gently, examining them both on the large hotel bed. But not in critical danger. No signs of abuse. Just clear neglect, missed meals, exposure, exhaustion. Whoever was supposed to be watching them wasn't. Evelyn nodded grimly. Can we give them formula? Already brought some, he said, patting the bag he'd carried in. I'll leave it here. And some emergency diapers, wipes, infant Tylenol. You'll need more by morning. After he left, Talia watched from the sofa with narrowed eyes. He's not going to tell no. He works for me. He's seen worse. Evelyn sat beside her. Do you want to talk now about what happened? Talia was silent. Then it wasn't supposed to be like this. Evelyn waited. My mom, she was sick. She said it was just the flu, but she couldn't get out of bed. Then she just stopped waking up. A quiet filled the room. I waited 2 days. Then I took Micah and Mira. I knew she wouldn't want us to stay. The landlord was already banging on the door. Her voice cracked. We went to the church. They gave us a sandwich, but they said I needed papers. I don't have papers. I don't even know where they are. Evelyn leaned back slowly, absorbing each word. Talia's next question surprised her. Why'd you stop, Evelyn? Blinked? What do you mean at the station? People don't stop. They stare or walk faster. Why did you? It was a good question, and Evelyn didn't have an easy answer. She thought about it, staring at the dim lamplight casting long shadows across the suite. Because I've been there, she said softly. Talia frowned. Not exactly there, but close, cold, alone, waiting for someone to see me and not just pass by. And because, she paused, because when I saw you, it felt like I knew you. The girl studied her, then nodded once. You're weird, for a rich person. Evelyn chuckled a genuine soft sound that hadn't escaped her lips in weeks. I'll take that as a compliment. Talia shifted on the couch. Are you going to keep us? The words hit her like a sudden gust through an open door. No, sweetheart, she said gently. I'm going to keep you safe. For now. One night at a time. That's a promise. No lies. She didn't say anything about forever. She didn't say anything about what tomorrow would look like. And that, perhaps, was why Talia finally curled up against the throw pillow and let her eyes close. Later that night, Evelyn stood at the window, arms crossed, watching the snow fall in thick sheets over the sleeping city. Micah let out a soft cry, and Evelyn went to him instinctively. She scooped him up, swayed gently on her feet, and then she noticed it, a tiny birthmark on the back of his neck. It made her chest go still, because once many years ago she'd seen that same mark in an ultrasound photo on the baby she'd never met. Her legs felt weak. No, it couldn't be. Could it? But the shape half moon. just under the hairline. It was too specific. She turned slowly to look at Talia. Same cheekbones, same eyes, a resemblance to someone she'd loved. Someone long gone. A terrible, impossible thought whispered in her mind. And Evelyn Monroe, who had built empires, won boardrooms, and stared down Wall Street titans, suddenly didn't feel so certain anymore. Morning arrived slowly, wrapped in winter's hush. Evelyn hadn't slept. She sat in the corner armchair, wearing a thick hotel robe, arms crossed tightly across her chest, gaze fixed on the twins nestled beside Talia on the pull-out sofa. Something about that birthmark had unraveled a memory she'd worked hard to seal off. The last time she saw Daniel, he'd been smiling like a fool, holding that ultrasound image, pointing to the small curved shape behind the neck of the baby they were expecting. See that he'd said, "That's from my side of the family. My cousin Nate has the same mark." It was burned into her mind. A birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. She had lost touch with Daniel soon after. A messy falling out. No closure, no certainty, just pain and paperwork and silence. And now here she was, with a baby in her arms bearing the same mark. She didn't want to believe it. She also couldn't not believe it. Evelyn stood and moved quietly toward her purse. She pulled out her old phone, one she hadn't touched in years, the one she kept at the bottom of her travel bag for emergencies. It was dead. She plugged it in, waited. When the screen blinked on, she scrolled through the photos, messages, old voicemails, fingers trembling. There, a message from Daniel, dated 9 years ago, one she'd never opened. "If you ever wonder where I went, I had to go protect someone more important than me." She swallowed. Attached was a blurry photo of a newborn baby, and just barely visible near the neck. The same mark. Her chest constricted. She could barely breathe. Her heart thudded so loudly she was afraid it might wake the children. Talia stirred under the blanket. Evelyn clicked off the phone and placed it on the side table. A choice pressed against her chest like a weight. If she was right, if this child really was Daniel's, then these children were family. And that made Talia family too. She turned toward the kitchenette, desperate for a distraction, and noticed a crumpled envelope on the floor near the base of the sofa. It must have slipped out of Talia's backpack during the night. She picked it up. It was weather-worn and damp, addressed in shaky handwriting. "For whoever finds us." She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper. The ink was smudged, but the words were legible. "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. My name was Nadia Grace. My daughter's name is Talia. The babies are hers, but she didn't have them the way other kids do. She took care of them when I couldn't. They're all I have left in this world. If you find them, please don't send them to the state. Please, let them stay together. Let them be loved. I tried. I really tried." The signature was jagged and rushed Nadia Grace. Evelyn folded the letter with shaking hands. So Talia was the one caring for the twins, not their biological mother. That part she'd guessed. But the rest, she wasn't ready for the wave that crashed over her then. Anger, guilt, hope, and a strange, sharp grief for the man she had pushed away, for the child she never knew was born. She pressed the envelope to her lips and closed her eyes. A knock startled her. Royce stood outside the suite. She opened the door quietly. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded. "I need you to find someone." He arched a brow. "Anyone in particular?" "Daniel Sterling." His mouth parted in surprise. "You're Daniel." She gave a small, tight nod. I need to know what happened to him. Everything. Use whatever connections we still have. Start with the hospital records, birth certificates, maybe even old court filings. And Royce be discreet. You think these kids are his? I think there's a strong possibility. He didn't question her further, just nodded and walked away. Evelyn stood there for a moment, hand on the doorknob, wondering how she'd gone from running tech summits and board meetings to navigating baby formula, faded letters, and ghosts of old love. She turned and saw Talia sitting up. You read it, didn't you? The girl said quietly. Evelyn hesitated. Yes. She wrote it right before she stopped waking up. She told me to keep it in my sock, but I guess I dropped it. She was brave, Evelyn said softly, and she loved you. Talia looked down. She was tired all the time. Sometimes she didn't even know my name. I'm sorry. Talia looked up. I don't want to go to a shelter. You won't. The girl studied her. Why are you helping us? Evelyn sat down beside her. She thought carefully before speaking. Because once, I didn't help someone, and I regret it every day. Maybe this is my chance to do something right. Talia didn't speak, but she nodded, slowly, then reached out and gently placed Mira in Evelyn's lap. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was trust. Later that day, Evelyn called a private investigator. She set up an emergency guardianship application under an alias just in case. She arranged for meals to be delivered, new clothes to arrive, and had the hotel discreetly extend her stay. Everything moved fast in the business world, but this needed to move with care. At dusk, while Micah napped and Mira nursed, Talia brought Evelyn an old, torn photograph. I don't know if this helps, she said. Evelyn took it. The man in the photo was unmistakable. It was Daniel, holding a baby, standing beside a tired-looking woman, Nadia Grace. There was a date on the back, March 3rd, 2017. 7 years ago. Evelyn stared at the photo long after Talia went back to the sofa. Every breath felt heavier than the last. If Daniel had a child, why had he never told her? Why did he disappear, and who else knew? Because if these children were connected to him, and if someone out there was trying to keep it secret, then this wasn't just a story of loss and survival. This was something much bigger. And Evelyn Monroe was no longer just a bystander. She was in it now, and she wasn't going to walk away. Evelyn Monroe had built empires out of code, intuition, and discipline. She could read the rise and fall of a market like the lines on her palm. But as she stared at the faded photograph in her hands, Daniel Sterling with a baby on his hip and a woman at his side, she realized she was in territory no algorithm could decipher. She had Royce discreetly send the image to her encrypted server. Zoom in, she told him. Look for clues. Anything a hospital band, street sign, something in the background. Her Royce was thorough. There's a medical bag behind them. Logo's faded, but looks like it says Mercy Field Clinic, possibly Midwest based on the architecture. Check every Mercy Field you can find, and any Daniel Sterling associated with those towns in the last 10 years. She hung up and sat heavily on the bed. Across the room, Talia changed Mira's diaper with practiced hands. Micah was cooing on the rug, holding Evelyn's leather wallet like it was a toy spaceship. Evelyn's heart tightened. She was used to sterile boardrooms, not this tangle of soft cries, sweet milk smells, and tender, exhausted grace. You okay? Talia asked. Glancing up, Evelyn nodded. Just thinking. About Daniel. The question hit harder than expected. Yes, Evelyn said. Did she ever talk about him? Talia hesitated. Sometimes, but only when she was really sad. She said he helped us once, when we didn't have anywhere to go. Then he disappeared. Evelyn sat down beside her. Did she say why he left? She said he had enemies, that he was hiding to keep us safe. I thought she meant bad guys or something, like a spy movie. But she'd cry, and then she'd tell me not to ask again. Enemies. That word echoed like a riddle in Evelyn's head. Later that night, Royce called back. I think we found the right place. Mercy Field Clinic, outside Cedar Pines, Illinois. Closed in 2018 after a fire. Guess who worked there for exactly 14 months before it shut down? Daniel A. Sterling, pediatric surgeon. Worked under a pseudonym at first, Marcus Ellison. But it's him, no question. Evelyn's breath caught. Do we know where he went after that? Not exactly, but he submitted a forwarding address to a P.O. box in Chicago. I'll have someone camp out there. Good. Discreetly. She hung up and leaned her head back, eyes closed. The walls around her, the ones she'd spent years building, felt like they were crumbling by the hour. Daniel had vanished from her life not because he stopped loving her, but because he had chosen to protect a child. Maybe even this child. Her mind flicked through what she knew. Daniel was brilliant, a surgical prodigy, but he hated the spotlight. After her company went public and she began making national appearances, he withdrew, said her world was too exposed, too sharp-edged. They argued, broke up, and then he disappeared. Now. She wondered if he had fallen into a hidden life, one built on secrecy and sacrifice. But why hadn't he come back? She turned to Talia, who was now brushing her damp curls in the mirror. Do you remember the last time you saw Daniel? Talia shrugged. I was maybe 3. I remember someone tall. He gave me a yellow bear. I named it Lemon. I still have it. She ran to her bag and pulled out a ragged stuffed bear, nearly flattened with time. Evelyn took it in her hands, torn at the seams, one eye missing, but carefully stitched in places, a tiny monogram on the ear Yes, it was him. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She sat by the window watching snow drift over the city skyline, thinking of the decisions she had made in her life, the people she'd pushed away, the child she might have never known existed, the young girl who now slept under her roof, carrying the weight of a family on her thin shoulders. She didn't cry, but her chest ached with the kind of quiet pain that lives behind ambition. The next morning, Royce called again. I've got a hit. Evelyn stepped into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. Talk. A man matching Daniel's description was seen entering a private hospice facility in Chicago 2 months ago. He used the name Dr. Mark Ellison, checked in under a restricted visitors list. The staff won't confirm anything, but my guy on the inside said the man had surgical scars on his neck and walked with a limp. Was he sick? No sign of that. But he met with an elderly patient twice, only stayed 15 minutes, left each time without saying a word to anyone. We're digging into who that patient was. Evelyn's voice was tight. Find him. Royce. I don't care how. I need to talk to him. Already on it. She emerged to find Talia feeding the twins small bits of scrambled egg. Mira had food on her cheeks. Micah was giggling between bites. The scene was simple and beautiful, and it didn't belong to her. Not yet. Evelyn walked over and crouched beside them. Would you like to visit the zoo today? She asked. Talia's eyes lit up. Seriously? Evelyn nodded. Seriously. Even if I don't have money, you've got me now, Evelyn said. And I happen to know the owner of this hotel. Talia smiled wide. Are you famous or something?" Evelyn gave a little laugh. Something like that. As they prepared to leave, Evelyn slipped the old letter from Nadia into her purse. She wasn't sure what the days ahead would bring, but one thing was becoming clear. The past had returned, not for revenge, but for reckoning. And Evelyn Monroe, CEO, billionaire, once called heartless by her critics, was finally listening with something more powerful than intellect. She was listening with her heart. The Lincoln Park Zoo shimmered under a blanket of frost, its pathways lined with twinkling lights and the soft hum of children's laughter. Evelyn Monroe had never spent a weekday morning among families and strollers. But now, she walked beside Talia and the twins, one hand gently supporting the stroller handle as Micah and Mira cooed at the world. Talia looked up at her. "Do you come here a lot?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Not really. I used to drive by it on my way to meetings and never thought to stop. I guess I thought I was too busy." "You're not too busy now," Talia said, skipping a little. "You're actually kind of fun." That word caught Evelyn off guard. She'd been called many things brilliant, cold, intimidating, but fun. Not in decades. They stopped at the penguin enclosure. Evelyn crouched down to Mira's eye level. "Look at that one," she whispered. "See how he waddles just like you when you're sleepy." Mira giggled, her tiny hand reaching toward the glass. Evelyn felt something bloom in her chest, an unfamiliar warmth that wasn't just maternal. It was something deeper, a sense of rightness, of a missed chapter somehow rewriting itself in real time. But the moment shattered when Evelyn noticed a man in a dark gray coat standing by the hot cocoa stand, facing away from them but clearly listening. He didn't have a child with him. No camera, no stroller, just a quiet stillness that made the hairs on her neck rise. "Talia," she said, standing upright, voice calm but firm. "Let's go see the giraffes. But now." She steered the stroller slowly but deliberately toward a more open section of the zoo. Her eyes scanned for exits, cameras, park staff, anything. The man didn't follow, but Evelyn's instincts, honed by years of boardroom betrayals and corporate espionage, told her he wasn't just a random visitor. That night, back at the hotel, she called Royce. "Someone was watching us." He didn't hesitate. "Describe him." She did. Every detail. "I'll pull security footage from the zoo and cross-check it with our known threats and contacts. Meanwhile, double-check your room security. Don't go out without detail." "Evelyn, not anymore. I want surveillance on Talia and the twins, too. Already set. Quiet. Low profile. But we've got eyes." Evelyn ended the call and sat on the edge of her bed. Across the room, Talia sat in a fluffy hotel robe, feeding Mira with a bottle while humming a lullaby Evelyn didn't recognize. She felt a strange surge of protectiveness, not just toward the children, but toward the little girl caring for them like she was born to. Talia Evelyn said softly, "Yeah, do you remember anyone strange watching you before I found you?" Talia thought, sometimes. There was a man who came to the shelter once. He asked about the twins, said he was from an adoption agency, but Mama didn't trust him. She said something felt off. Did she report him? I think she tried. But no one really listens when you're broke and scared. Evelyn clenched her fists in her lap. That night, after the children had gone to sleep, Evelyn opened her laptop and accessed her private database. She scanned Daniel's known aliases, the hospice patient records, and a new file Royce had quietly dropped in subject Isaac Wexler, a private investor. No criminal record, but suspicious transactions over the past 5 years, purchased medical records illegally. tracked children with rare blood types, affiliated with a shadow pharmaceutical group later shut down, last known location Chicago, posing as a guardian recruiter for failing adoption centers. Evelyn's heart pounded. She clicked another folder, this one. An old, encrypted journal Daniel had kept. She hadn't read it in years, out of respect. But now, she needed answers. One entry read, "There are people who see children not as lives, but as leverage. I left Evelyn not because I stopped loving her, but because if they knew I was connected to her, they would have come for her too. I made myself small, invisible, but I've seen them watching, especially the ones with unusual markers. If anything happens to me, find the girl with the crescent scar above her ear. She's more than she knows." Evelyn sat back, stunned. She crept into the twins' room. Mira was sleeping soundly, one hand curled near her head, gently. Evelyn brushed back her hair. There it was, a tiny crescent scar just above her right ear. It wasn't just a birthmark. It was a target. Evelyn stepped back, shaken. Her mind raced. Was that why Daniel left? To protect this child? This little girl who might not even be his by blood, but was his by bond. And if someone like Isaac Wexler had found them now. She picked up her phone. "Royce, pull every file we have on Wexler's movements over the past 6 months. If he's in Chicago, I want eyes on him, and increase security on our suite." There was a pause. "Evelyn," Royce said carefully, "there's something you need to know. Daniel Sterling. He's not just being watched. He's missing. Our guy at the hospice says he hasn't been seen in over a week. Left a note with one word, run." The line went dead silent. Evelyn's voice was steady but cold. "Then we find him. Whatever it takes." She hung up and turned toward the children's rooms once more. There were things she couldn't undo. Years lost, words unspoken. But she could fight now, and she would. The rain came softly that morning, a fine mist that blurred the skyline outside Evelyn's penthouse windows. It was the kind of day Chicago rarely offered, quiet, silver, and still. But inside Evelyn Monroe's mind, there was a gathering storm. She hadn't slept. Her mind had replayed Daniel's journal entry again and again. "She's more than she knows." It haunted her, those words. And that scar on Mira's temple. A perfect crescent, like a fingerprint from another life. Not just a birthmark, a sign, a warning. She stood at the window, arms crossed over her robe, watching the city stir below. Behind her, soft baby cries echoed down the hallway, followed by Talia's footsteps padding across the floor. That girl, 9 years old, but carrying the weight of someone 3 times her age, was already tending to the twins like she'd done it her whole life. "Talia," Evelyn called, turning. The girl appeared in the doorway, Mira on her hip, her other hand holding a bottle. "Morning. Come sit with me." Talia blinked. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart," Evelyn said, offering the gentlest smile she could muster. "I need to talk to you. About your mama. And Daniel." Talia's expression tightened. She shifted Mira to her other arm and sat carefully on the couch. "What about them, I think? Daniel might have known something. Something important about Mira and Micah. And your mother may have known, too. Did she ever say anything strange before she passed? Anything about people watching you?" Talia's eyes flickered. She hesitated. "There was one night," she said slowly, "a few weeks before she got real sick. She made me promise if anything ever happened to her that I should never take the babies to the hospital. Not even for a cold. She said someone might be looking for them. I didn't understand it then. I thought she was scared. Or maybe imagining things. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Your mama wasn't imagining it, Talia. I think someone's been tracking children like your siblings. Maybe even trying to take them. The room fell silent, thick with something unspoken. Talia's chin quivered. Are they going to take Mira and Micah? No, Evelyn said firmly. Not while I'm here. She stood, walked to the bookshelf across the room, and opened a hidden drawer inside one of the cabinets. A soft click sounded, revealing a black leather pouch. From it, she withdrew an old USB drive one Daniel had given her years ago and told her never to open unless she absolutely had to. She'd forgotten it existed. Until now. Plugging it into her laptop. Evelyn watched the screen flicker to life. A folder appeared. Project Reverie. Confidential. Password protected. She tried a few guesses. Nothing worked. Then she paused, looked over at Talia. Do you know what your mother called Daniel? When no one else was around? Talia nodded. Dream. Evelyn stared. That was the name of his first project. She murmured, Dream. Reverie. She typed the word Dreamkeeper 1986. Access granted. Her breath caught. Inside were documents, scans, emails, journal logs, most dated over 10 years ago, before Daniel disappeared. The files spoke of a biotech startup that had gone bankrupt under mysterious circumstances. It wasn't about medicine. It was about memory. Daniel had been working on a way to store and retrieve memory patterns in children born with a rare genetic marker. Children like Mira and Micah. Apparently, not to cure illness, but to enhance memory transfer. A concept that, at the time, had been dismissed as dangerous pseudoscience. Yet in these files were names. Other children, other families, all listed as missing. Evelyn's fingers trembled. One entry stopped her cold. Subject 7A, Mira Grace. Dob matched. Scar location noted. Mother Natalie Grace. Status at risk. Removed from trial due to maternal refusal. Location unknown. Oh my God. Talia watched her carefully. What does it mean? Evelyn turned the screen away from her. It means your mother was right to run. Royce called moments later. I have eyes on Isaac Wexler, he said. He's booked a conference room at the Belmont Plaza, just a few blocks from you, using a fake company name. But one of our people tailed him. Evelyn, he's not working alone. He's got backing. Medical contractors, shell accounts, possible off-the-books lab access. What do you think he's after? Evelyn asked, though in her gut, she already knew. Children, Royce said grimly. Specifically, children who were once part of something Daniel tried to stop. Does he know where we are? Not yet, but he's close. Too close. Evelyn looked at Talia. The girl's eyes were wide, but calm. Strong. Just like her mother must have been. We need to move, Evelyn said. We're leaving the city. Tonight. Talia nodded slowly. Where will we go? A place Daniel once took me, Evelyn replied, already packing her things. A house in Door County, by the lake, secluded, safe. He called it the Wake Place, where you go when everything else has drowned. That evening, under cover of darkness, Evelyn secured a private SUV. She loaded the twins gently, wrapped in blankets. Talia sat beside them, clutching her backpack, the corner of a photograph sticking out the last picture she had of her mother. Evelyn paused at the edge of the parking garage. Something in her told her this wasn't just about protection. It was about war. A quiet war waged in labs and courtrooms and board meetings. A war where children were used like code data to be mined. Not lives to be loved. Not anymore. Not on her watch. The roads out of Chicago were slick with rain, the kind that turned city streets into mirrors and highways into ribbons of doubt. Evelyn Monroe kept both hands on the wheel, eyes steady on the long drive north. Behind her, Talia had fallen asleep with one twin in each arm. Mira's little hand rested against her cheek. Micah's fingers curled around the collar of Talia's coat like he knew, even in sleep, that she was home. They drove in silence for most of the 4-hour trip. Save for the soft classical music Evelyn kept low on the radio Debussy, mostly because Daniel had loved him. It was nearly midnight when they turned off the main road and onto a gravel path flanked by bare trees. The house came into view like a secret revealed by moonlight. It wasn't grand, not like Evelyn's penthouse or the other properties Daniel had once owned. This was something else, something simple and sacred. A single-story cottage with weathered cedar siding and tall windows overlooking Lake Michigan. There were no guards, no cameras, just silence, the kind that wrapped around you like an old friend. Evelyn parked the car, heart pounding. She had only been here once before. Years ago, Daniel had brought her the winter after they lost their son. "I call it the wake house," he'd said, watching the snow fall from the porch. "It's where I learned to stop pretending I wasn't grieving. Now." She wondered if he'd chosen it for more than reflection, if he had known it might one day need to be a sanctuary again. She carried the twins inside, one by one, while Talia followed with a duffel bag over her shoulder and exhaustion in her eyes. They set the babies down in a makeshift crib Daniel had once built from driftwood, then curled up under thick blankets in the main room. For the first time in days, Evelyn exhaled. Talia's voice broke the quiet. "Do you think they're still looking for us?" Evelyn didn't lie. "Yes." "Then why come here? Because this place can't be found in files or traced through bank statements." Daniel made sure of that. He built it, before all the tech companies, before the money. It's off every grid that matters. Talia nodded, thinking. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "I found this," she said, "in Mama's old sewing kit. I think it was meant for you." Evelyn's fingers trembled as she unfolded it. Natalie's handwriting was unmistakable, looped, neat, precise even in fear. "Evelyn, if this ever reaches you, then I know I've run out of time, and I pray you haven't. The twins, they're not like other children. I never understood why until Daniel came to me all those years ago, pleading to end what he'd helped start. We were both scared, but he was braver than I was. He said their minds would change the world or be used to destroy it. I've kept them hidden, moved cities, changed names, but I'm tired and sick and afraid of what will happen when I'm gone. If you're reading this, please protect them, not just from men like Isaac, but from the world that thinks it's entitled to them. Show them love that doesn't ask anything in return. You're the only one I trust with this, because you lost a child, too, and you know the difference between legacy and life." Natalie Evelyn couldn't hold back the tears. She pressed the letter to her heart and closed her eyes. She thought of Natalie's face so different from her own, but sharing the same lines of loss. She had only met her once, briefly, at a conference where Daniel had spoken on ethical biotechnology. She remembered thinking how strong she looked. Now she realized it wasn't strength. It was armor, worn by a mother who knew she might have to disappear. Later that night, Evelyn sat on the back porch with a mug of tea, and the wind off the lake cutting through her sweater. She didn't feel cold. She felt cracked open. Royce called again. She answered with a whisper. "They've escalated," he said without greeting. "Wexler just hired 3 private security contractors, ex-military. Discreet but efficient. How close? Not yet within reach. But they're running a pattern on your driver's routes. They suspect you're not at home. It's only a matter of time. What are they looking for? They don't know. Not exactly. But they've leaked rumors, claims that Evelyn Monroe has taken custody of genetically flagged minors for experimentation. It's a PR trap. They're baiting you into surfacing." Evelyn felt a wave of fury. They think I'd exploit them. They think if they control the narrative first, the truth won't matter. She looked through the glass door, watching Talia sleep on the floor beside the twins. "I want to go public," Evelyn said. "I want to release Daniel's files. The real story. Project Reverie. The whole damn thing." Royce hesitated. "That could be dangerous. For them and for you. I'm not hiding anymore. After the call." Evelyn sat alone a long time, listening to the waves roll against the rocks below. She remembered the day her son died. It was a car crash, a storm. She had been late picking him up from piano lessons. Daniel had gone instead. They never made it home. She had tried so hard to build something after that. A life, a legacy, a company people would respect. But none of it had filled the hollow inside her. Until now. Now there were 3 sleeping children in her care, who weren't hers by blood, but were bound to her by something stronger purpose. Not ambition, not wealth, but love rooted in responsibility. She went back inside and knelt beside Talia. "Sweetheart," she whispered. Talia stirred. "What's wrong? I need your help," Evelyn said softly. "We're going to tell the world the truth about your mama, about Daniel, about Mira and Micah." Talia blinked, scared and awake. "Will they believe us? I don't know," Evelyn said honestly. "But I believe you, and that's where we start." It started with a single camera, mounted just above the old fireplace in the lake house, its light blinking softly in the dim morning. Evelyn Monroe stood in front of it, her hands resting lightly on the armchair in front of her. No makeup, no sleek ponytail, just her in a navy blue sweater, hair loose around her shoulders, and an expression that was somewhere between storm and surrender. Talia sat in the corner with Mira and Micah, reading softly from an old storybook. The twins were quiet, more alert than usual, their wide eyes fixed on Evelyn as if they knew something was about to shift. And it did. Evelyn took a breath and spoke, her voice low but steady. No scripts, no edits. "My name is Evelyn Monroe. Some of you may know me as the founder and former CEO of Lumion Technologies. For 20 years, I stood at the forefront of artificial cognition and medical AI. But today, I'm speaking to you not as an executive, but as a guardian." She paused. 3 nights ago, I found a girl barefoot, soaked, holding 2 infants in her arms on the corner of Halsted and 47th. She had nothing but a tattered bag and a note pinned inside her coat. The screen flickered briefly as Royce Henderson adjusted the feed remotely from his safe house in Detroit. "That girl," Evelyn continued, "is named Talia Grace, and the 2 babies are her siblings Mira and Micah. They are the biological children of Natalie Grace, a woman the public has never known, but whom certain corporate interests have hunted for years." Why she looked directly into the lens now, eyes sharper. Because Mira and Micah are the result of a secret experimental project called Reverie, a program designed not for healing, but for control, for profit. Evelyn reached into the side drawer and lifted a folder, Daniel's old file, marked with a silver clasp. Years ago, my late husband, Daniel Sterling, was lured into a partnership with Isaac Wexler and Horizon Laboratories. Together, they pushed the limits of neural mapping and gene-embedded cognition. What started as a hopeful exploration of enhanced empathy and intuition quickly became something far more dangerous, manipulating memory, compliance, even decision-making. She opened the folder and held up a photograph, an ultrasound image, labeled Subject M plus F Reverie Roiseau 2. Daniel broke away. He leaked internal documents. He sought to destroy what they'd built, but the board silenced him, buried the files. Natalie, a junior neuroscientist at the time, ran, pregnant, alone. She lived in hiding for years, until last week, when she died protecting her children. Evelyn's voice caught, but she didn't stop. I took them in, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because I knew, in that moment, that the future was asking for a witness, and I said yes. The feed went live across encrypted channels, bouncing between nonprofit media alliances and civic networks, bypassing the controlled outlets. For those of you watching from boardrooms, yes, I have the full Reverie files. I have the whistleblower videos. I have signed statements from former Horizon staff. And if anything happens to me, to Talia, or to these children, the world will have them too. Royce's voice crackled in Evelyn's earpiece. You're live in 27 countries already. South Africa just mirrored it. But Evelyn had stopped listening. She was staring into the lens as if it were a mirror. Empathy is not a commodity, and children are not prototypes. And then she said, the one sentence she hadn't rehearsed, I lost my son to men who thought the world was a board game. I won't lose them, too. She ended the feed with a click. The silence that followed felt holy. For a full minute. No one spoke. Not Royce. Not Talia. Not even the twins. Just the quiet of the lake outside and the truth hanging in the air like fog. Then Evelyn turned around. Talia looked up from the book. Was that safe? No, Evelyn said softly, but it was necessary. By nightfall, everything had changed. Public response came in waves. First, disbelief, then outrage, then solidarity. Anonymous hackers leaked archived Horizon documents Evelyn hadn't even known existed. Former employees of the Reverie Initiative began reaching out to Royce through encrypted inboxes. One offered a sworn deposition. Another promised access to the off-site research logs. A woman named Dr. May Lindstrom uploaded a 9-minute testimonial from her garage in Fresno. I worked on the auditory learning pathways for Reverie 002, she said. I didn't know it was children. I thought we were modeling primate cognition. When I found out, I resigned and signed a gag order. But I saw those twins in Evelyn's broadcast, and I saw how afraid they looked. I should have said something years ago. I'm saying it now. Meanwhile, Evelyn's legal team, which Royce had quietly reactivated, was preparing for war. Civil protection filings, emergency injunctions, custodial transfer appeals, the Monroe Foundation, once just a philanthropic arm, turned into a shield overnight. But not everyone was on their side. Within hours, Evelyn's personal bank accounts were flagged for audit. A false claim of tax evasion surfaced on a fringe media site tied to Wexler. Her condo in Chicago was surrounded by unmarked vehicles, some of them flashing vague federal credentials, and the twins began to understand that the world outside wasn't just confused, it was dangerous. Ah. That night, Talia sat beside Evelyn on the back steps of the lake house. She was quiet, watching the stars blink through clouds. "Do you ever wonder," she said suddenly, "what it would have been like if we weren't special? Just normal?" Evelyn smiled, tired but tender. "I think about it all the time." "And do you regret it?" Evelyn's answer took a while. "No, but I do grieve it." They sat together, shoulder to shoulder, the weight of survival pressing into their bones. Inside, Mira stirred in her sleep and murmured something that sounded like music. Micah's hand reached out for hers in the dark. And Evelyn understood something she hadn't until then. The children weren't dangerous because of what they were. They were dangerous because of what they reminded the world. That love, given freely, couldn't be patented. That humanity, when protected, was more powerful than any technology built to control it. And that scared men like Wexler more than any algorithm ever could. The day after Evelyn's broadcast, the world moved with unnerving speed. She had expected noise backlash, maybe an orchestrated smear campaign, but she hadn't expected applause. News outlets praised her bravery. Activists shared her words with hashtags like "Nah, Protect, Ruvery Kids, and Truth Uncaged. Even late-night talk shows turned her quiet speech into a rallying cry. It was strange, because Evelyn had spent enough time in boardrooms and back rooms to know one thing. Applause was sometimes just the sound that came before the executioner's axe. A Royce called around midnight. His voice was tight. "They're framing the narrative." Evelyn was in the kitchen, steeping chamomile tea with shaking hands. "What do you mean they're running stories now? Not just about Reverie. About you. That you're unstable, grieving too long, vulnerable. One network said you've become obsessed with 3 unknown children and might be psychologically unfit." Evelyn swallowed hard. "They're laying the groundwork." "Exactly," Royce said. "They're not fighting the facts. They're fighting you. Discredit the messenger, kill the message." She looked over to the living room where Talia slept on the couch, curled protectively around the twins. Mira's little hand was resting on Talia's neck, as if anchoring her. Micah's thumb was in his mouth, still twitching from a dream. "And if they can't discredit me," Evelyn asked softly, "they'll try to disappear you." There was a long silence between them. Then Evelyn whispered, "Then we give them something they can't contain." Oh. The next morning, she met with Royce and legal counsel over encrypted video. They laid out the new map testimonies from former Horizon staff, timelines showing gaps in Wexler's official disclosures, a shadow fund that had paid off at least 5 lower-level researchers to sign NDAs. Royce called it Operation Lens Flare. "Why that name?" Evelyn asked. He grinned slightly. "Because when you shine too much light too fast, they can't see where the real danger is coming from." She liked that. It made her feel sharp again. Still, underneath it all, she could feel the trap closing. Not the kind that used brute force, the kind that smiled. Sure enough, 3 days later, Evelyn received a visit at the lake house. Not a raid, not a threat, a knock. She opened the door to find a tall woman in a dove-gray trench coat, flanked by 2 polite men in civilian suits. "Ms. Monroe," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm Lydia Raines. I work with the Department of Family and Youth Protection." Evelyn stepped outside, gently closing the door behind her. "Is there a concern?" "Only a standard welfare check. Given the media attention and the children's unique needs, we wanted to ensure that their living conditions are safe and stable." Behind the woman's kind tone, Evelyn heard it clearly. "We are here to build the case." "Of course," Evelyn said calmly. "I'd be happy to schedule something through my counsel." Lydia didn't flinch. "That won't be necessary. We have a judicial writ." Evelyn's breath caught. So soon, they were going to try to take them. But she nodded and opened the door. Inside, the twins played on a soft blanket with wooden toys, unaware of what loomed above them. Talia stood stiffly by the window, watching the strangers with narrowed eyes. One of the men leaned toward Micah, clipboard in hand. "Can you say your name for me?" Buddy Micah blinked, then hid behind Evelyn's leg. Lydia made notes. They stayed for 45 minutes, asking quiet questions. Were the children enrolled in any formal medical care? Was Evelyn their legal guardian? Did she have documentation? Had she filed for emergency custody? Each question chipped at her authority. Each answer, no matter how careful, added to their file. "When they left," Talia whispered. "Are they taking us?" "Not yet," Evelyn murmured. "But they will try again." That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She walked the floor of the guest room, Daniel's old notes spread across the bed, rereading the codes that had once terrified her. Micah's biometrics, Mira's neural sensitivity scores, projections on what they might become. Genius revolution weapons. She stared at the graphs until they blurred, and then she did something she hadn't done in years. She cried, not because she was afraid, because she knew what power did to innocence. She had seen it in Daniel, how it wore him down, hollowed him out, how the boardroom had taken his curiosity and twisted it into currency, and how, when he tried to reclaim it, they'd erased him like a footnote. She wasn't going to let that happen to these kids. But the question stayed with her. Was she strong enough to stop it? In the early morning, Evelyn called an old contact, Kavita Ramesh, a child rights attorney with a record of impossible wins. They met on a frozen bench outside a law library in downtown Minneapolis. "I read the files," Kavita said, tapping a thick manila folder. "It's damning, but they won't go after the science. Why not too risky? Too many fingers in that pot. They'll come for custody first. Frame you as a delusional guardian. Talia's a minor. The twins unclaimed dependents with no documented birth certificates. They'll push for state placement, maybe even corporate guardianship under developmental observation clauses. Corporate guardianship. It's happened before. Quietly. Wexler's done it with other biotech anomalies. They don't want freedom. They want patents that crawl." Evelyn stared at her. "What do we do?" "We fight, but not like CEOs, like mothers." And for the first time since Daniel's death, Evelyn understood the difference. By the end of the week, Kavita filed an emergency preemptive custody claim in Hennepin County under the name Evelyn Monroe. Acting guardian by necessity and protection, it was risky, but so was silence. Back at the lake house, Evelyn sat with Talia and explained everything. "What if they make me go?" Talia asked. "What if they split us up?" "They won't," Evelyn said gently, "because we'll stand in front of every door, together." Micah, hearing the tension in their voices, crawled into Talia's lap and said the only word he'd learned to say, with perfect clarity: "Home." And Evelyn knew, in that moment, they weren't just fighting for safety. They were fighting for a place where love could no longer be weaponized, where children could be more than data points, where the applause couldn't be turned into a trap. The courthouse loomed large against the pale gray morning, its columns coated in frost, its windows dark like closed eyes. Evelyn had stood in many halls of power before, but never one where the stakes felt so raw, so close to the bone. This wasn't about board takeovers or media narratives. This was about children, about Talia, about Mira and Micah, about whether love real, honest, quiet love could ever be enough when the world only recognized contracts and credentials. Talia clutched her hand as they walked through the security gate. "I don't like this place." "You don't have to," Evelyn said softly. "Just stay close." In the courtroom, everything felt too polished, too clean, the kind of place where emotion was trimmed down into evidence, where stories became exhibits, and humanity had to be argued like a legal point. Kavita stood at the table beside Evelyn, a fierce calm in her voice. "We're not here to win with sympathy. We're here to prove protection is not just a right, it's a necessity." Evelyn nodded. Her palms were sweating. On the other side of the courtroom sat a representative from the state, Angela Stillman, a career official with a permanent frown and a stack of binders. She wasn't malicious, but she was cold, efficient, bureaucracy in human form. And next to her, uninvited but somehow already in place, sat Graham Wexler's legal proxy. Evelyn recognized him instantly. Devlin Hart, the same Devlin who had overseen Daniel's final contract, the same one who'd smiled through lies and buried the truth behind a wall of jargon. He gave her a polite nod, as if this were just another quarterly dispute. Evelyn stared straight through him. The hearing began. Angela made her move first, citing lack of formal documentation, questions about Evelyn's mental stability due to grief, the questionable circumstances under which she assumed care of the children. She is not related to them by blood. She has no legal standing, and while her compassion is admirable, it does not equate to lawful custody. Kavita rose, sharp and steady. The children in question were abandoned in sub-zero temperatures. Talia Grace was hiding in a public park with infant siblings. There is no biological parent stepping forward. Ms. Monroe is not only the only adult they trust, she is the only adult who has not failed them, Angela countered. And yet we have no clear information on the children's identity. No birth certificates. No known medical records. Kavita raised an eyebrow. Which is precisely why Ms. Monroe has sought legal guardianship, so they may receive full care, stability, and protection without delay. But it was Devlin's quiet interjection that twisted the air. "If it pleases the court," he said, with a practiced gentleness, "Wexler Futures has initiated proceedings for emergency protective custody under Minnesota Statute 257C03, Subdivision 2. The children in question may be part of a proprietary clinical cohort with classified developmental origins. Their well-being is paramount, and we are uniquely positioned to provide for them housing, education, psychological monitoring." Evelyn shot to her feet. "You mean containment? You mean control?" The judge banged the gavel once. "Ms. Monroe, let your counsel speak." But Kavita placed a calming hand on her arm and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this is a corporate entity attempting to obtain guardianship over children. Children, not research subjects, not data. Human children who were found freezing, scared, and alone." Devlin leaned in slightly. "And if Ms. Monroe's care was so sufficient, why was she not forthcoming about their neurological irregularities?" The room fell silent, Kavita said carefully, because she chose to treat them as people, not experiments. The judge didn't respond. He called for a recess. Evelyn walked out of the courtroom shaking, not because she feared Devlin, because she feared the silence of the judge. In the hallway, she leaned against a pillar, trying to breathe. Kavita approached slowly. They're stalling. They want to push it to a full hearing. More time means more digging, more pressure. And if they prove any instability, they'll take them. Possibly just the twins. Talia could be sent to juvenile shelter care. Evelyn stared at the floor. Her throat tightened. Is there anything we missed? Kavita asked. Anyone who might help someone with authority. Evelyn hesitated. Then she whispered, Daniel's father. Kavita blinked. I thought he was dead. No, Evelyn murmured. He just chose silence. That night, Evelyn drove 2 hours north to a quiet forest compound once used for Wexler family retreats. Daniel's father, Robert Wexler, had retired there after stepping down as chairman of the board. He'd distanced himself from Graham, from the corporate war, from all the noise. When she arrived, the man who opened the door was older, slower, but unmistakably Wexler's sharp gray eyes. The same furrowed brow as Daniel. Evelyn, he said simply. I need your help, she replied. She told him everything, the park, the babies, the research, the hearing. Robert sat in silence as the fire crackled behind him. After a long moment, he said, I warned Daniel. I told him not to push those boundaries, but he didn't listen. No, Evelyn said. He listened to his heart. That's why they buried him. Robert looked at her. Do you believe they're his yes? I believe it in my bones, and I believe he gave them to the world because he hoped someone would love them enough to fight back. Robert stood, walked to his desk, pulled out a leather folder. These were the original off-record scans. One set was marked DM, for Daniel Monroe. The other was marked MT, Mira and Talia. Evelyn's breath caught. Proof, not from science, but from legacy. He placed the folder in her hands and said quietly, Go protect them. The next morning in court, Kavita submitted the folder as a sealed exhibit. Angela demanded a delay. Devlin filed an emergency motion to suppress, but the judge perhaps moved, perhaps shaken, overruled. Evelyn didn't win the case that day, but she won something else, a court order granting temporary guardianship. 30 days, just 30. But it was enough time to get ready, to prepare for the war they both knew was coming. And as Evelyn walked out of the courthouse with Talia by her side, and the twins bundled against her chest, she whispered into the wind, We're not running anymore. Snow fell lightly outside the townhouse windows, dancing like whispered memories against the glass. Inside, Evelyn stood in the nursery she'd pieced together with love and borrowed time. Micah was teething, gumming the edge of a soft giraffe toy, and Mira was curled in her blanket. Her breathing steady now, no longer marked by those panic-startled gasps from their first nights. And Talia, the oldest of them all, sat cross-legged on the carpet, her eyes serious as she read aloud from a second-hand children's book she had insisted on learning word by word. Evelyn didn't cry often, but that day, standing in that moment of fragile peace, she did, not from sadness, but from knowing how close she'd come to never having this. 30 days of temporary guardianship. That's all the court had given her. And tomorrow, the 31st day, a new hearing, a new fight. Another chance for Graham Wexler's empire to try and undo what love had dared to build. Her phone buzzed. Kavita. Bad news, she said quietly. Wexler Futures filed for emergency jurisdiction in federal court this time, claiming developmental custody based on proprietary research lineage. They're using the biological derivative argument again. They're saying the children are their property, Evelyn murmured, her voice flat. In so many words. Yes. Evelyn clenched her jaw. She wanted to scream, but screaming didn't help babies sleep. It didn't calm an anxious 7-year-old with a deep fear of being left behind again. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you. I'll be ready." That night, Evelyn stayed up long after the children had fallen asleep. She pulled out the storage bin where she kept old photos once from before the world burned at the edges. Pictures of her and Daniel, photos of the research lab where hope had first taken shape. She remembered his eyes when he'd whispered about a project that wasn't a cure, but maybe a bridge. He never got to name them. Micah, Mira. She had chosen those names. Names with soft strength and echoes of mourning. And Talia. Talia had named herself in a way, back when she first held Evelyn's hand in the dark and said, "Don't let them take us." She thought of leaving, thought of disappearing to the Upper Peninsula or beyond, Canada even. But that would make her no different from those who stole children in the name of law, or erased identities in the name of science. No, she wouldn't run. She would fight with truth, with proof, with the kind of love that had no price tag and no patent. The next morning, the courthouse had changed. Federal court was colder, not just in temperature, but in tone. Men in navy suits passed with brisk silence. No warmth, no humanity. Graham Wexler was there this time, in person. He arrived flanked by his attorneys, camera ready and flanked with spin. But when Evelyn entered the room holding Micah in one arm and Mira in the other, and Talia beside her holding tightly to her coat sleeve, the silence shifted. Even Graham looked momentarily unsure. The judge entered. A woman this time. Judge Marilyn Esteban, firm, silver-haired, eyes like steel traps. The proceedings began fast. Devlin Hart presented Wexler's motion. These children were born under unprecedented genetic conditions, developed within a secured cohort in Wexler Lab's Extended Bioscience Division. They are not traditional minors, but biological derivatives from pre-coded genome studies. As such, they fall under corporate protection due to intellectual property status. Kavita stood. "Your Honor, this is a human rights case, not a patent dispute. These are children, born, abandoned, and rescued. What Wexler Futures is trying to do is strip them of personhood," Devlin added. "We have reports brainwave anomalies, behavioral acceleration, indicators of advanced experimental composition." Evelyn interrupted softly. "Talia has nightmares." Everyone turned. She doesn't wake up screaming. She goes silent. She buries her face into her knees and shakes because she remembers what it was like to hide her brother and sister in a trash bin to keep them from freezing to death. Judge Esteban held up a hand. "Ms. Monroe, you'll have time to testify. Counsel, please proceed." Kavita took a breath. "We submit Exhibit 7B, a signed letter from Robert Wexler acknowledging the children as part of his late son's personal research branch, disconnected from company authorization. He verifies that these 3 were not registered under corporate sequence classification." That landed like a thunderclap. Even Graham shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The judge reviewed the document, her brow furrowed. Then Evelyn rose. With permission, she approached the bench not to argue, not to plead, but to speak as a mother. "I didn't birth them," she began, "but I stayed when they cried. I stayed when no one else did. I held them when they were sick. I taught Talia to read, and I stayed up through the night when Mira had her seizures. I didn't do it for recognition. I didn't do it because I wanted anything from them. I did it because they're mine in the only way that matters." Her voice cracked. "And if you take them from me, they won't cry. They'll go quiet. They'll disappear again, this time behind glass and tests and needles. You'll call it protection, but they'll call it being forgotten." There was silence. No legal motion, no counter-argument, just the quiet, unbearable weight of truth. Judge Esteban leaned forward. "These children are not property," she said at last. "They are not assets. They are not derivatives of a concept." She paused. "They are people." Then she looked directly at Evelyn. "This court grants full and permanent guardianship to Evelyn Monroe. Effective immediately. All counterclaims dismissed." Talia didn't speak as they left the courthouse. She simply reached up, took Evelyn's hand, and squeezed it 3 times. Micah babbled something unintelligible. And Mira stared up at the sky with her wide, starlit eyes and said her very first word, "Home." The snow had stopped. It wasn't dramatic. No storm clearing, no sudden burst of sunlight. Just a quiet stillness, like the sky had finally exhaled. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the little townhouse, clutching a chipped mug of tea between her hands. The kids were inside warm, asleep, safe, safe. She repeated the word in her head like a silent prayer. Safe. It had been 40 days since the court ruling. 40 days since Judge Esteban gave her not just custody, but acknowledgement. Recognition that what they had built was real, human, sacred. Evelyn had used those 40 days to rebuild, not just the walls of their home, but the cracks inside herself. It was strange how something so small as the sound of children laughing could solder shut the fractures trauma left behind. She thought of Daniel, his eyes behind round glasses, always distracted by equations, always half listening, but never unloving. He hadn't lived long enough to be a father, and yet, somehow he had created the children who called her mama now. Sometimes, she wondered what he'd say if he saw them. If he saw her, would he be proud? Would he understand why she chose not to run? Behind her, little feet padded against the floorboards, Talia, hair still wild from sleep, rubbing her eyes with one hand, holding a small notebook in the other. "You're up early," Evelyn said, smiling softly. Talia shrugged. "Bad dream. Do you want to talk about it?" The little girl paused, then nodded slowly and climbed onto the bench beside her. "I dreamed someone came and said it was time to go back, that they made a mistake." Evelyn reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They didn't make a mistake. Baby, you're exactly where you're supposed to be." Talia looked up at her. "How do you know?" Evelyn placed a hand on her chest. "Because this feels like home. And you don't take people away from home just because it makes someone else uncomfortable." There was a long pause. Then Talia opened her notebook. "I wrote a letter," she said, "but I don't want to send it yet. Can I read it to you?" Evelyn nodded. Talia took a breath. "Dear Mr. Wexler, I'm not mad at you anymore. I don't want your company. I don't want to be a science kid. I just want to be Talia. I want to draw and read and help Mira when she cries. I want to live with Evelyn and go to school and maybe have a dog someday. You can keep your money, but you can't keep my name. That belongs to me now." She looked up, blinking. Evelyn wiped a tear from her cheek. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "And brave." Talia smiled shyly. "I think he's sad, too." Evelyn tilted her head. "Who, Mr. Wexler? He always looked mad. But when you said they'll disappear behind glass again." He looked sad. like someone who used to believe in something, but then forgot. Evelyn didn't respond right away, because in her heart, she knew Talia was right. Something in Graham Wexler had shifted that day in court. Not enough to undo what he'd done, but maybe enough to start a different path. She could only hope. Later that afternoon, a package arrived. No label, no return address, just a plain white envelope taped to a small box. Inside were 3 things: a photograph, a deed, and a letter. The photograph was of Daniel Young, smiling, arms around a younger Graham Wexler, somewhere near a beach, laughing. The deed was for a plot of land near Birch Falls, quiet, wooded, about 2 acres. The ownership line now read Talia, Mira, and Micah Monroe, jointly held in custodial trust under Evelyn Monroe, and the letter typed, precise, impersonal, but beneath the cold tone, Evelyn could feel the intention humming like an apology too stiff to say aloud. This gift is not an admission. It is simply a closing of accounts. I hope it brings them peace. And maybe you too. G.W. She stared at it for a long time. A chapter closing? Maybe not with a hug, but with acknowledgement. That night, Evelyn tucked the kids in early and sat in the kitchen with Kavita. The lawyer stirred her tea absently. You know what this means, right? Evelyn nodded. They won't come for them again. Because they know they'd lose, Kavita said. The media would chew them alive. Public opinion is with you now. Evelyn smiled softly. It's not about the media. It's about them finally realizing these kids aren't test subjects. They're just children. Kavita hesitated, then said, You could sue, civil damages. What they put you through, I know. Evelyn said, But I won't. Why not? Evelyn looked toward the hallway, where 3 tiny humans dreamed of better worlds. Because I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to raise them in peace. The next spring, Evelyn stood at the edge of the land near Birch Falls. The old caretaker's house still stood a little battered, but with bones strong enough to mend. She reached down and lifted Mira, who squealed with delight at the fluttering leaves. Micah toddled ahead, chasing a butterfly, and Talia walked slowly beside her, holding Evelyn's hand with quiet pride. This would be their home now. Not just a house, but a place where stories could begin, rather than escape. She had no idea what the future would look like. Would the kids remember the cold nights? Would they grow curious about their origins? Would she have the words to explain? She didn't know, but she did know this. They would never again be left on a street corner like forgotten science. They would never again be silenced by someone with a bigger bank account. And they would never again feel like they were disposable. They were hers, not by blood, but by bond. And that bond, unbreakable. Forever. They weren't born of her blood, but they were hers in every way that mattered. Evelyn Monroe didn't wear a cape. She didn't have wealth, fame, or a last name that opened doors. But she had heart. She had courage. And most of all, she had the will to stand when even the law tried to push her down. In a world where power is too often confused with love, and where poverty is mistaken for unfitness, Evelyn reminded us all what it truly means to protect, to nurture, and to never give up, even when you're told you don't belong. Let this story linger with you. Let it be a call to recognize every Evelyn out there. And let it be a warning that children are not experiments. And love cannot be measured by bank accounts or biology. If this story moved your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us tell stories that matter, stories that challenge injustice, celebrate quiet heroism, and remind us of the power of one voice, one choice, one act of love. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of each other.